Pos Indonesia.
Siapapun bisa mengajar, tapi tak semuanya bisa menjadi guru. Semua orang bisa menolong sesama, tapi tak semuanya bisa mengemban amanah. Siapa saja bisa menjadi abdi negara, tapi belum tentu mengabdi dengan dedikasi. Dengan jaminan pasti dan layanan terbaik, Taspen hadir untuk Anda, pahlawan bangsa.
Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the capital city of Indonesia, Jakarta. Before we begin, please know that we have provided a number of water refill stations at the foyer area in an effort to reduce the use of plastic bottles. To support the sustainable development movement, please feel free to refill your tumbler anytime. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not bring any food and beverage into the Nusantara 5 room. Thank you.
Major transformation has led Indonesia's state-owned enterprise on the path towards stronger corporate governance, profitability, and resilience.
The Ministry and SOEs are committed to empowering our future workplace and youth employment, advancing our digital transformation, keeping our planet livable for generations to come. And we are empowering our diversity.
Let us all drive our communities, our economy, our nations, and our world forward.
Gue mau investasi aja.
Tapi nggak ngerti caranya.
Jangan khawatir. Kamu bisa investasi beragam aset sekarang nggak pakai ribet. Semua ada di aplikasi Peluang. Betul, bisa nabung emas, reksadana, indeks saham Amerika, dan aset lainnya. Hanya dengan 3 klik, kamu bisa investasi praktis, aman, dan berpotensi lebih untung. Kapan lagi? Peluangmu sekarang.
Wika bukan hanya hadir, tetapi turut menorehkan sejarah panjang pembangunan Indonesia, serta tidak ragu mereposisi diri menjadi BUMN yang siap berkompetisi di kancah internasional. Baktiku untuk Wika, baktiku untuk Indonesia.
We dedicate each drop of this sweat to you, to the people of Indonesia. We will continue to give our best to the nation. We will always be eager to develop the country. Innovation for solutions.
This is the first step to bring smile. BRI, Pegadaian, and PNM strides on, bringing changes as one entity, bringing you closer to us, and answering all your needs to bring smile. This is our answer that brings you to grow and brings meaning to everyone's smile.
Selamat datang di sebuah pengalaman perjalanan baru Indonesia bersama Journey. Terbang bersama kami untuk melihat pariwisata Indonesia, sirkuit internasional, bentang alam, ragam atraksi budaya, produk lokal asli Indonesia, warisan budaya, keamanan dan kenyamanan. Journey membawa keramahan Indonesia ke dunia.
Tumbuh kembang kami juga memberikan makna dan arti. Betapa pentingnya peran kami yang tak pernah lepas dalam hadirkan konektivitas. Karena kami yakin dan mampu untuk terus lewati batas dan merajut konektivitas. Indonesia.
Welcome to all delegation and representative in Nusantara 5. Please be seated in the designated chair. Once again, welcome to all delegation and representative in Nusantara 5. Please be seated in the designated chair. Thank you. Welcome to all delegation and representative in Nusantara 5. Please be seated in the designated chair. Once again, welcome to all delegation and representative in Nusantara 5. Please be seated in the designated chair. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and please welcome Her Excellency Ibu Retno Marsudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan
Major
Ibu.
transformation has led Indonesia state-owned enterprise.
Sorry. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, Y20 Indonesia has been held since the beginning of this year, and it has been one incredible journey. We visited several cities across Indonesia, and whilst being indulged by the beautiful culture and scenery of the cities, we have had amazing talk show and gatherings that generated a lot of extraordinary ideas. Now, let us watch together the Y20 Pre-Summit highlight that were held in Balikpapan, Lombok, and Manokwari. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us watch together the parade of head of delegation of Y20 countries, observers, and organization institution. Please welcome Argentina, European Union, United States of America, Saudi Arabia, Australia, France, United Kingdom, Russian Federation, Brazil, Germany, Turkey, Italy, Canada, India, South Korea, Japan, China, Mexico, South Africa, Indonesia. Observers, ASEAN, Refugee, Asian Development Bank, Spain, Indigenous people and local communities, Timor-Leste, Islamic Development Bank, United Arab Emirates, World Bank Group, person with disabilities, World Trade Organization. Finally, we present to you the official delegates and observers to the Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022. All head of delegation, please rise both to the front and both to the back, and please be seated. Once again, please give a big applause. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the capital city of Indonesia, Jakarta. My name is Muhammad Gibran, and it is honor for me to be host of the opening ceremony Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022. From recovery to resilience, rebuilding the youth agenda beyond COVID-19. For your information, this event is held in accordance to health protocols and COVID-19 regulation in Indonesia. All of our speakers and performers have been fully vaccinated, so they will remove their masks for a better presentation. However, for attending participants here, we advise you to always wear your mask throughout the event. We will also like to remind you that you can refill your tumbler at the nearest water station. Before we begin, we would like to extend our warm welcome to our distinguished guests. Her Excellency, Ibu Retno Marsudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Indonesia. Bapak Dian Triansya Jani, Co-Sherpa of G20 Indonesia. Bapak Asrorun Niam Soleh, Deputy 2 of Ministry of Youth and Sports. Ibu Putri Aneta Komarudin, Member of Parliament of Indonesia. Ibu Sri Sanjay Kumar, Secretary, Youth Affairs, Department of Youth Affairs, Government of India. Ibu Pachkat Kumar Singh, Director in Ministry of Youth and Sports, Government of India. All co-chairs and Y20 Indonesia 2022, and also everyone here today in the Nusantara Vive, and to all of you in Y20 delegates, participants, and invited guests around the world who are watching virtually on Zoom and Y20 Indonesia YouTube channel. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022. From recovery to resilience, rebuilding the youth agenda beyond COVID-19. Y20 is a forum for future young leaders from all the countries of G20 members. We are here to discuss and exchange ideas to reach a joint agreement in regard to the agenda of the G20 presidency. With our theme, From Recovery to Resilience, Rebuilding the Youth Agenda Beyond COVID-19. This year, the summit is held in Jakarta and will be closed in Bandung, Indonesia, from the 17th to the 24th of July 2022. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, we would like you to rise from your seat for the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, led by Bapak Samianto. Thank you. Please be seated. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we will show you a video to introduce the Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, or IYD, as the organizing committee of Y20 Indonesia 2022, and to show you what we have accomplished so far on the road to Y20 Indonesia 2022.
Indonesian Youth Diplomacy is a non-profit youth organization that actively promotes international exposure and drives inclusive empowerment for Indonesian youths to be influential voices at the national and international level. Through its 4 overriding missions: sustainability, inclusivity, relevance, and impact, we aim to ensure that the Indonesian youths understand the importance of their voice and role in national and global diplomacy and policymaking. Following the G20 presidency of Indonesia, IYD was given the mandate to be the official organizing committee for Y20 Indonesia 2022. Since 2010, Indonesia has been represented at the Y20 summits by astounding youths. 2010 G20 Youth Summit Vancouver, Canada. 2011 G20 Youth Summit Paris, France. 2012 G20 Youth Summit Washington, D.C., USA. 2013 Y8 Summit London, United Kingdom. 2013 Y20 Summit St. Petersburg, Russia. 2014 Y20 Summit Sydney, Australia. 2015 Y20 Summit Istanbul, Turkey. 2016 Y20 Summit Beijing and Shanghai, China. 2017 Y20 Summit Berlin, Germany. 2018 Y20 Summit Cordoba, Argentina. 2019 Y20 Summit Tokyo, Japan. 2020 Y20 Summit Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And 2021 Y20 Summit Milan, Italy. And now, it is time to welcome the Y20 delegates to our home, Indonesia. Right after Y20 Italy 2021, we started with a post-summit dissemination of the Y20 Italy 2021 communique with our G20 co-Sherpas and various stakeholders. Then we moved on to roadshows for the Indonesian delegate selection process and held a media gathering for the launch of Y20 Indonesia 2022. In January, we launched the Y20 white paper, and finally, we carried out our recruitment of the Indonesian and ASEAN delegation for Y20 Indonesia 2022. This year, our theme is From Recovery to Resilience, Rebuilding the Youth Agenda Beyond COVID-19, with 4 priority areas: youth employment, digital transformation, sustainable and livable planet, and diversity and inclusion. This year, for each pre-summits, we shall take you around Indonesia, where you shall see our diversity, cultures, people, and especially our youths. All of these will bring us to the Y20 Summit, which shall take place in 2 cities, Jakarta and Bandung. Y20 Summit Indonesia 2022 will also give youth startups and initiatives a chance to present their works by providing them a forum to network and for the international community to acknowledge them and perhaps be interested in purchasing their products at the Y20 2022 Virtual Expo. So let us move from recovery to resilience by rebuilding the youth agenda beyond COVID-19. See you at the Y20 Summit Indonesia 2022.
Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, moving on with our event, we will listen to a report by the co-chair of Y20 Indonesia 2022. Please welcome Bapak Michael Victor Sianipar.
Foreign Minister Ibu Retno, and Minister of Youth of Singapore, Mr. Alvin Tan, Member of Parliament of Indonesia, Putri Komarudin, Co-Chair of Indonesia, Mr. Dian Triansyah, Deputy of the Minister of Youth and Sports Indonesia, Pak Niam, and also Mr. Secretary Sri Sanjay Kumar from the Ministry of Youth, India, and to all the ambassadors, foreign dignitaries, delegates, observers, and distinguished guests. Welcome to the Y20 Summit of Indonesia. Also welcome to Jakarta, welcome to Indonesia. We are finally here. After having done all the pre-summits, from the first one to the fourth one, through all the different parts of Indonesia, now we gather here because we believe that there is the urgency and the need for young people, not just from different parts of Indonesia, of the country, but across the world, together, have a discussion and talk about the future of the world that we want to create and ensure. I am sure that some of us, including myself, are here because of privileges, the privilege of good education and good upbringing. Some others have made it here to represent your country because of sheer hard work and grit. But whatever background we have, however we come here, we represent the young people of our countries respectively. I was the delegate of Y20 in Japan back in 2019, and that was also the last time we had a meeting in person. And finally, after a few years, we are doing it again in Indonesia. It is an honor and it is a joy for us to host all the delegates and observers coming to Indonesia. But at the same time, I also want to remind, as the co-chair of Y20, that on our shoulder lies a huge responsibility. Because not many young people can come to this building and attend this event. Some would say that Y20 is an exclusive event, which is true because considering the limited number of people that we can have. But that is why we have made all the efforts from our committee. And also, I'm sure that you also have made the efforts in your country to ensure that we hear the aspiration and opinion of all the other youth. And that is also our motto in Indonesia. Like the saying, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity and diversity. We celebrate our diversity in Indonesia, and we believe that we should celebrate the diversity of the world. But it is also important that within that diversity, there is unity, there is coherence, there is understanding. And that is the purpose of Y20 Indonesia and the Indonesian presidency of G20. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, as a young person myself, I still consider myself young, I would say that Y20 is the premier youth forum on a global level. This is the closest that young people in the world can reach the world leaders. And there's this tradition in Y20 that we deliver the communique directly to the head of state. We are hoping to do so when we are done with our communique. We're still trying to arrange the meeting with the president. I hope that it will go well. But this is the closest that a youth forum can address world leaders. Perhaps this is the only time as a young person we can try to influence decisions and policies on a global level. Perhaps not many of us are government officials. We might come from private sector or NGOs. But when we gather here as one, we bring that force. We bring that spirit and strength of the youth of the world. So when you discuss the communique, I hope there will be fruitful discussion and actionable items. Deliverables, that's what the President of Indonesia, Joko Widodo, always said to all the engagement groups. We hope that there will be deliverables that we can enact upon. And we are also inviting Y20 organizers, not just delegates, because we also want to talk about the future of Y20. We are not just a token. We are not here as a trophy. There's Y20 given from one country to the next and so on, with no impact. I don't want to be a part of that group, and I'm sure neither do you. We are here because we want to make impact. We are here because we want to see a better future as young people, because we will live in that future world. And I believe that we will be leaders of the world someday. And I hope that the understanding and also the friendship that we built in Y20 Indonesia will be something that we carry on beyond Y20 Indonesia, beyond today, beyond this year, beyond COVID. Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Michael. And next, opening remarks by member of the People Representative Council of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome Ibu Putri Anita Komarudin.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, Mrs. Retno Marsudi, Co-Sherpa of G20 Indonesia, Pak Trian, Deputy of the Ministry of Youth and Sport of Indonesia, Pak Niam, Minister of Youth Singapore, Secretary Minister of Youth Indonesia, distinguished ambassadors, members of the House of Representatives of Indonesia, honorable co-chairs and organizing committee of the Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022, the Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, guests, fellow youth, distinguished Y20 delegates, participants and observers, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to warmly welcome you all, the Youth 20 Indonesia Summit 2022 delegates and observers to the House of Representatives of Indonesia, where we legislate and adopt laws for the betterment and prosperity of our people, including our youth. My name is Putri Komarudin, member of the House of Representatives of Indonesia for House Commission 11 on Finance, Banking and National Development Planning. I am also a member of the Committee for Interparliamentary Cooperation and chairperson of the Indonesian Parliamentary Youth Caucus. In lieu of these roles, I am delighted to talk to you today because I once sat on your seat as a delegate for the Y20 Summit. Last year, thank you. Last year, I was honored to serve as the head of the Indonesian delegation for the Y20 Summit in Italy, virtually, but it's okay, we can meet today in Indonesia. And joining the delegation while serving the nation as one of the few young MPs has been one of the highlights and challenges in my public service career. And it is a very short career still, unlike Bu Menteri, of course. But it is undoubtedly one of that reminds me clearly that what I also represent is ultimately the Indonesian youth. Last night, I believe that our Speaker of the House, Honorary Puan Maharani, has mentioned that globally, youth representation in national parliaments only amounts to 2.6%. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, currently, there are 72 young MPs out of 575 young MPs, 575 MPs in total, and the number certainly could do better. especially compared to the last term's legislative election in 2014, where representation reached 16%, that is 92 of 560 MPs. Considering that almost a quarter of Indonesian population is youth, it is no doubt that our representation in decision-making processes should be advanced. But what our young parliamentarians have yet to reach in number, we compensate through dedication. Young MPs aged 21 to 40 from 8 political parties and commissions agreed to institutionalize a forum, the Indonesian Parliament Youth Caucus, to consolidate a cross-sectoral collaboration in championing youth perspectives or issues in our parliamentary works. Indonesian youth is one of the most active and engaged movements against recent laws, policies, and social issues. They held a peaceful demonstration and requested to meet with MPs to relay their aspirations, which sometimes are challenging to fulfill. Therefore, the caucus also aimed to address this gap and provide an accessible communication channel between youth and their young representatives. In addition to the Youth Caucus, the Parliament acknowledges the youth's significant role as the present and the future of Indonesia's leadership by launching the Young Parliament Program and the Parliamentary Internship Program. We educate students about the functions of parliaments and politics to inspire them to pursue careers in politics and public service. Most importantly, an understanding of their right to be represented in our country's decision-making processes. And yet, the most substantial proof of our parliament support is today and to you, where we opened the House of Representatives for the Y20 Summit Indonesia 2022, the first time in the summit history. So let's give a clap for the Indonesian House of Representatives for the remarkable event today. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that what the Y20 Summit represents and serves is not only a glance, but the future of our global policy direction. Our discussion addresses the most pressing issues that our society faces today. It reflects what our youth demand today to flourish and what we need to face future challenges. Our communique is the guide for our parliament and government's policy making. With this in mind, the Indonesian delegates agreed that strengthening youth empowerment, especially in politics and decision-making processes, is one of the cornerstones to fully incorporating the communique into the global, regional, and national policies. Based on our national experience, we found that there are still gaps, huge gaps in resources and opportunities against young political candidates to enter politics and advance as general election candidates. In 2019, for example, the increase in the participation of young legislative candidates was more than 100% compared to the 2014 election. But unfortunately, this growth is not in line with the electability performance of young candidates, as the number of elected young legislative candidates declined. Responding to the facts, we believe the government needs to enact measures encouraging youth to enter politics. Some recommendations include adopting statutory youth quotas, either in public administration offices or party nominations, to ensure inclusive representation in political constitution, including providing access to financial support to finance the nomination process through subsidies or fiscal stimulus, for example. In the communique, all delegates also emphasized the importance of youth and vulnerable groups' participation and active role in the decision-making at all levels of leadership. Post-communique, the Indonesian delegation has worked tirelessly to disseminate our recommendation and, of course, building close cooperation with various governance bodies and ministry. And as an MP, I incorporate the communique into my works in the House Commission 11, parliamentary diplomacy, my political party, and of course, constituents. In line with our financial inclusion recommendation and the communique, we are working with our partners in House Commission 11, such as the Ministry of Finance, the Bank of Indonesia, and the Indonesian FSA to accelerate our financial inclusion and literacy. We also work to regulate financial technology industry, where there's a bill is in discussion, And on the local level, I have been working with our partners from national banks and the FSA to educate our youth on access to SME finances, as well as closely monitors effective and targeted conditional cash transfer disbursement as part of COVID-19 relief. Ladies and gentlemen, the real work does not end by concluding the communique. It starts after, when we consistently monitor and relentlessly disseminate them to our national government. With this in mind, delegates should be able to construct a communique that consists of forward-looking and innovative proposals while also ensuring that it is coherent and workable to be adopted into policies and laws. Looking back to my experience as a delegate, it sure is not an easy task to achieve, but we managed to power through the long discussions to agree on a communique we all could be proud of. This, I am sure you all agree, and no doubt we'll be able to achieve. Lastly, I would like to thank the Indonesian youth diplomacy for your endless commitment and hard work and tears and laughter in between, of course, and best effort in organizing the Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022. As part of the Y20 legacy, member of the Indonesian Parliament and Global Youth, I look forward to your brilliant recommendations for our shared future. On behalf of the Indonesian Parliament, I wish for a successful Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022, and I hope you enjoy your time in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Putri Aneta Komarudin. And now, please allow us to invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia to deliver opening remarks. Please welcome Her Excellency Ibu Retno LP Marsudi.
In terms of age, I may not be young anymore, but in terms of energy and spirit, I feel that I'm still young. So please consider positively that I can be an observer of the Y20. Well, honorable co-chairs of Y20, ministers, ambassadors, representative of Y20, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, a very warm welcome, of course, to Indonesia, to Jakarta. Colleagues, we are meeting at a time of unprecedented challenges. While the world has yet to fully recover from the pandemic, we are already confronted with new and pressing issues: fragile and uneven global recovery, geopolitical tensions, including its devastating impacts to food and energy security. It is in these circumstances that Indonesia presidency of G20 is being carried out. Indonesia believes that G20 has a collective responsibility to address global challenges by putting aside our differences and working together with good faith. Only then we can ensure the G20 remains relevant and fit for purpose. Y20 delegates, against this backdrop, it is truly fitting that today's meeting take place at the Indonesian Parliament building, the heart of Indonesian democracy. Throughout our history, youth such as yourself have played a central role in bringing change and driving Indonesia forward, from the days of our independence to our transition in becoming one of the largest democracies in the world. President Sukarno of Indonesia once said, "Give me 1,000 people, I will shake the mountain. Give me 10 young people, and I will shake the world." In the midst of global challenges, I truly believe that the transformative capabilities of 1.2 billion youth worldwide can provide immense contribution for global solutions. On our part, governments must also create conducive environment where youth are empowered to take control and ownership and exert positive influences. Y20 delegates, to chart a better future, Y20 must be able to advance two roles of the youth. First, youth as agent of peace. As future leaders, youth should take bigger role in ensuring a peaceful, more inclusive, prosperous, and sustainable future. In today's globalized and interconnected world, this can only take place by fostering dialogue. Fostering dialogue, building bridges, and not building walls. Bridges that are based on diversity. Michael mentioned about diversity. Made through collaboration and fortified by inclusion. These are the stream that keeps the river of peace running. In this regard, I would like to commend the Y20 for emphasizing diversity and inclusion in all its priority areas: youth employment, digital transformation, and sustainable and livable planet. Second, youth as agent of change. Y20 delegates to address multifaceted challenges of our time and change the world for the better, thinking outside the box and innovation solutions are crucial. In this connection, youth must invest on issues that will determine the fate of tomorrow, such as health, digital transformation, energy transition, and chart a better future for generations to come. As agents of change and instrumental actors in these issues, I look forward to hearing the Y20 Summit recommendation on how we can make real progress on these priority issues. Y20 delegates, the Y20 Summit must serve as an effective platform to pass on the baton of the future. The youth must be the beacon of solution for the world. To recover together, to recover stronger. And I wish you all a successful meeting. And for the Y20 delegates coming from abroad, of course, enjoy Jakarta, enjoy Indonesia. I thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ibu Retno Marsudi, for keynote speech. And now we invite Ibu Retno Marsudi to stand in front of the delegates and participants and in front of the stage for photo session. And all ladies and gentlemen, please rise on your position for photo session. Okay, on position. In 3, 2, 1. Once again, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you Ibu Retno Marsudi. Thank you all participant, delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you Ibu Retno Marsudi, and Ibu Retno Marsudi want to go for the next agenda. Please give applause. Once again, thank you Ibu Retno Marsudi for keynote speech. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Now, opening remarks by Deputy 2 of Ministry of Youth and Sports, Bapak Asrorun Niam Soleh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, His Excellency Madam Retno Marsudi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, FK speech, Co-Sherpa G20 Indonesia, Pak Triansah Yani, Mbak Putri Komarudin, Member of Parliament of Indonesia, Mr. Alvin Tan, Minister of State for Culture, Community and Youth, Singapore, Mr. Sri Sanjay Kumar, Secretary Youth Affairs, Department of Youth Affairs Government of India, Co-Chair of Y20 of Indonesia, sahabat saya, Mas Michael Sianipar, and from Indonesia Youth Diplomacy, distinguished Y20 delegates, excellencies, Indonesian youth, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Jakarta. It is a great pleasure for me to be standing here in front of you to be part of this event. This evening, I represent the Minister of Youth and Sport of Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Zainuddin Amali, because in this time, he is on state duty in Solo, Central Java. He sent his warm greeting to all of participants. On behalf Minister of Youth and Sport of Republic of Indonesia, I am delighted to welcome youth delegates from across to G20 countries. I would like to congratulate all delegates for being here on the final event of Y20 Indonesia 2022. I would also like to extend my appreciation to everyone involved that despite the limitation we are facing due to the pandemic, we keep working to make the event a great success. Ladies and gentlemen, Y20 has become very relevant to contribute in accelerating problem solving with spirit, creativity, and innovation, as well as mastery in the field of science and technology. Today, we are connected as one community, a global youth community. That is why it takes commitment to respect each other, build solidarity with each other, and stay together with each other. The power of we, not about I, not about you, but let's say together, we are one. Let's say together, we are one. We are one. With us, let's recover together. In this context, the Prophet Muhammad SAW, like the interconnection between us, the human race, to one body. If one limb is injured, then all part of the body is affected, unable to sleep comfortable and get sick. Martin Luther King once said that we must learn to live together as brothers and praise together as fools. Ladies and gentlemen, in solving problem, we need priority. There are 4 priority issues of Y20 Indonesia 2022 to be discussed and formulated together. The 4 priority issues are youth employment, digital transformation, sustainable and livable planet, and diversity and inclusion. In this series of pre-summit 1 to pre-summit 4 in Palembang, Lombok, Balikpapan, and Manokwari, I believe delegates have discussed and exchanged views with experts from the field of these 4 priority issues. It is now the time for delegates to further develop the ideas to be put into the communique. I hope that you will work diligently over the next few days to develop the communique which builds on the recommendation which will be presented to the country's leader. Distinguished Y20 delegates, ladies and gentlemen, since the Mas, you have moved through a very busy and full program of Y20 Indonesian 2022. Beyond the focus of working meeting, workshop, and plenary session, I know this event has also provided you with the opportunity to make lasting friendship. This friendship you make will be important network for you to continue to engage with for many years. Ladies and gentlemen, there are over 1.8 billion young people in the world today. We witness how young people worldwide are taking action to solve problems in the pandemic era. This also proves that youth as agent of change hold the solution to any challenging situation, and we must be there to support and encourage our youth to develop and increase their capacity for a better future. We don't know for sure when this pandemic will end, but we must be optimistic that we will be able to get through in it well and achieve a better life. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has experience managing diversity for a single purpose. Indonesia has 17,000 islands, more than 270 million people, 1,331 tribes, 652 languages, for a commitment to togetherness with the same motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, translated unity in diversity. In the context of international relations, we cannot and should not be content in our national relations with narrow territorial boundaries. It takes a commitment to build openness and mutual acceptance. Lastly, I would like to say that Y20 should be one of the contributions of youth for a better world civilization, from recovery to resilience, and from Indonesia to a better world. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome, Vice Minister.
Thank you, Bapak Asrorun Niam Soleh. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen. At the beginning, we have watched the video of Y20 Pre-Summit Highlight. The series of activities that we had has led us to this day. This is the moment we have all been working so hard as we step into the next chapter of our long journey. Let us watch a video that shows a transition from the pre-summit to the summit of Y20 Indonesia 2022. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this event is hosted by Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, supported by Provincial Government of DKI Jakarta and Enjoy Jakarta, the Regional Government of West Java Province, supported by the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise of the Republic of Indonesia, and the following state-owned enterprise, which are driving force of the country's economic growth: Wijaya Karya, Hutama Karya, BRI, Injourney, Jasa Marga, Pos Indonesia, PT Adi Karya Persero Tbk, Krakatau Steel, Pelabuhan Indonesia, Taspen, ASDP Indonesia Ferry. Sponsored by Peluang, GoTo, Bank Sentral Asia, Tanoto Foundation, PT Bayan Resources Tbk, Kadin Indonesia, Moya Group. And also, we would also like to inform you that you can visit Y20 Expo virtually. Please visit our virtual expo through y20indonesia.org and click Virtual Expo button. Ladies and gentlemen, the activities during the summit include not only negotiation and communique drafting session, but also a range of different activities such as site visit, reception, virtual expo, and talk show. The first talk show, which will be about youth employment, aims to deep dive into the government's policy related to informal and non-standard workers, discuss the importance of social safety nets for informal and non-standard workers, and it's a long-term bottleneck. Furthermore, we also would like to discuss the causes of uneven development, opportunity gaps, and its impact towards the youth. Discuss how about to connect key players within the youth social entrepreneurship ecosystem and obstacles which mostly happen in youth social entrepreneurship. Distinguished guests, Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to the next agenda, which is the first talk show of the Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022, From Recovery to Resilience, Rebuilding the Youth Agenda Beyond COVID-19. Our first talk show will talk about making youth employment work, empowering youth to thrive in a post-pandemic. Before we start first talk show, Let me introduce you to our moderator, Bapak John Dominguez. John Dominguez is a management consultant with the Ignite Group, a Washington, D.C.-based digital transformation consultancy. Before joining Ignite, he lived in Petersburg serving as a Coro Fellow in Public Affairs in 2020. Dominguez graduated from Cornell University with a degree in Industrial and Labor Relation. Bapak dan Ibu yang terhormat, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Y20 USA delegates to Y20 Indonesia 2022, John Dominguez.
Good afternoon, delegates, observers, guests, reporters. It's my honor to be on the sitting here up here with all of you and our distinguished guests today. So first, I'll introduce Mr. Pahala Mansuri. Pahala is the Vice Minister of State-Owned Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia. Before serving as the Vice Minister, Mansuri was the CEO of PT Bank, and his career comprises of a plethora of high-ranking positions across state-owned enterprises. In addition, he's worked in the private sector at Anderson Consulting, the Boston Consulting Group, and he has an MBA from the NYU Stern School of Business. Our next guest is Mr. Alvin Tan. Alvin Tan is the Minister of State for the Ministry of Culture, Community, and Youth, and the Ministry of Trade and Industry. He was first elected as a member of parliament in July of 2020, so happy 2-year anniversary. Before joining the government, he worked in various organizations and NGO and private sector roles at LinkedIn, Goldman Sachs, the United Nations, and Oxfam. He has a degree from the University of Sydney and Harvard University. Our next guest is Dr. Vivi Alatas. She is one of the co-chairs of the T20 Task Force on Inequality, Human Capital, and Well-Being. Alatas describes herself as an economist with a passion for poverty research. Formerly, she was a lead economist at the World Bank, where she led a team of seasoned local and international economists producing papers with collaboration from high-ranking Nobel laureates. So please welcome Vivi Alatas. And then finally, our last guest who's joining us online, Mr. Guy Ryder. He has served as the Director General of the International Labor Organization since 2012. He's finishing up his second term. Before he joined the ILO, he was the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, having led the unification of the Democratic International Trade Union movement, and he's a graduate of Cambridge University. So ladies and gentlemen, let's honor all our guests here today. So to give you guys a little bit of background, this panel, we're talking about youth employment issues. Over the last few months, our youth employment delegates, we've been talking about issues related to how to create a social protection system that graduates people out of poverty. And then secondly, we've been talking about youth social entrepreneurship. How do we build jobs in and create a business framework that works for people and also supports people's professional development and moral and intellectual development as they grow in their careers. And so our panelists are going to help give us some wisdom as we start drafting our communique over the next week. Hopefully they'll give us some really good answers to help us produce a solid communique. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So the way we're going to start, we'll have 2 opening questions where each panelist will give their answer. It'll be roughly 3 minutes, long enough for them to make the point, and short enough to make the point, but not long enough that's a keynote address. So our first question has to do with social protection. So panelists, as some countries are experiencing demographic bonuses where a rising youth population will be surpassing the rest of the population. With this momentum, what are the implications does this have for safety net programs? Will safety net spending decline? Or with fewer people, with more younger people, will governments be able to add to these safety net programs with more training and work enhancements? So I'll let Mr. Alvin, you can start with this question.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all of the delegates here joining us today. I would say a few things that the world has changed remarkably post-COVID, and I think, as the Minister had mentioned earlier on, COVID is still really much amongst us, but there have been a few structural shifts. The few structural shifts include the fact that work is no longer the way that we have experienced it before. Work is now very much more flexible. We call it flexible work arrangements rather than work from home, because it has been enabled by and indeed accelerated by COVID-19, the digitalization age. That is one. The second is that work has also been more dispersed. Because of the first move, the second thing is that you can almost work from anywhere. So digitalized, online, work from anywhere. Now what does this have to do then with youth employment? That means you'll have to do a couple of things. The first is that you have to be very nimble. You have to be able to cut across different cultures. You have to be able to make sure that you are able to speak different languages and also cut across different kinds of organizations, private, public, and also non-profit sector. Where does government then play a role? First, governments, in fact, indeed my government is working on a few different things. The first is to make sure that we are providing the basic, making sure that there is investment into our country so that these jobs reside in our country. So for example, over the last year or so during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have tried to get investments in vaccine manufacturers, semiconductor manufacturers, tech manufacturers, agri-food tech companies into Singapore, new jobs for our youth. The second is you have these jobs, but you need to be able to upskill our youth to be able to take these jobs. The way to do that is a couple-fold. First is to make sure that in the formal sector, in your universities, in your institutes of higher learning, and indeed in your technical colleges, you are able to train a whole group of youths to be able to take on these jobs. You do not necessarily need degrees. You can have diplomas. You can have micro skills to take on these jobs. These jobs continually change. They continually pop up in different places, so you will also need to have continual skilling. So in Singapore, we have this organization or this initiative called Skills Future, where we give every Singaporean $1,000 if you're aged 22 and above, and you get these credits to take on new skilling, to take on these new skillings to enable you to take on these jobs. And we work with our unions, our governments, and our employers to enable our youth to be able to shape their training, working with employers so that they can take on these jobs. So the future of jobs, skilling, and creating jobs that are available and suitable for youth.
Thank you so much. And next up, we'll have Dr. Vivi. What do you say?
I think both the demographic bonus momentum and also pandemic actually further emphasize the importance of spending more and spending better on social protection, especially for youth. We learn from history how shocks like fuel, viral, financial, food can have devastating impact on any country. No country is immune. Just to give an example, in Indonesia, before pandemic, the last decade before pandemic, we had 18,000 small and large disasters throughout the country, amounted to loss of 16 billion US dollars. As a result, poverty is very fluid in Indonesia. People exit and enter poverty. Every year, 50% of the poor are new poor. So if we look in terms of poverty, the biggest tickets comes from women and youth. Because of like the difference between male and female labor force participation, the much higher youth unemployment if we compare it with adults. And especially with bonus demography, if we want to reap the benefit of bonus demography, we need to make sure that we can have the maximized potentials of the young generation. Social protection is important to ensure that we can help them prevent, mitigate, and cope with shocks. The type of social protection does not have to be only safety net, but also can be safety trampoline that can help them bounce back and getting like their maximum potential again.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vivi. Panelists, try and speak closer to the mic so everyone in the back will be able to hear you guys, hear your wisdom on these questions. So thank you so much. And Mr. Pahala, what do you say to this kind of question?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think just to echo a little bit what Alvin just mentioned just now, I think what the pandemic has actually really emphasized was the fact it is actually accelerating some of the changes that we've already been seeing to actually happening, but due to the pandemic, the changes is actually accelerating. Number one is actually about the importance about digitization and about the development of the media. It is actually becoming very visible that every economy, including that of Indonesia, we need to be able to develop the capability, because the contribution of this sector about digitization, whether it is actually telecommunication, IT, and we need to actually be able to develop the reskilling of the youth of Indonesia to be able to take the opportunity and be able to make this an opportunity not only for the businesses, but also for the youth population to be able to participate actively in this sector. The second is about the renewable sectors as well as the other sectors like mining, energy, and agriculture. It is actually becoming visible, as we are actually seeing right now, that almost every country in the world is facing the challenges of how are we going to be able to address the energy sector challenges, particularly coming from the renewable sector, as well as how are we going to be able to develop the agricultural and the food sector of the future by utilizing the various technology for us to be able to do that. And I think similarly also in Indonesia, we are facing the challenges, how are we going to have more of the Indonesian youth to be able to develop the capability, the knowledge to not only develop this sector with the traditional mindset, but to be able to actually develop this and so that Indonesia in the future, like for example, in the battery sector, for example, this is actually the energy of the sector of the future, how Indonesia are going to be able to participate in the sector and be able to become one of the global center of the supply chain of the battery production in the future, because we do actually have the mineral sectors to be able to develop this, and how are we going to be able to go further down the value chain and develop the industrial sector of Indonesia in the future. And that also, as I mentioned, how are we going to be able to develop Indonesian workers, particularly the vocational studies that are actually going to be able to allow Indonesian youth not only at the highest level, but also at the youth level in the middle management as well as the lower part of the management. The third is about developing entrepreneurship, because I think the future of Indonesia, we are not going to be able to just focus on how are we going to be able to develop the workers of the future, but how are we going to be able to develop the entrepreneurs of the future. And I think that is also the third part, how are we going to be able to develop the education of Indonesia in the future to be able to enhance the entrepreneurial skill of Indonesian youth and other economies, I think around the world will need to be able to actually address that as well.
Thank you so much. I mean, as we know, the best social protection is bringing in an income with a job, and I think you really hit the nail on the head with stimulating entrepreneurship. So, finally, Mr. Guy, what does the ILO Director General have to say?
Greetings to everybody there. Thank you for the opportunity to participate.
We can't. We're having a hard time hearing you. Here, try now.
Can you hear me now?
Give us a second here. we might just have to turn up the speaker. Here, try now.
Is it okay now?
Hold on.
Low.
Try that again.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
A little bit better. What else can our audio team do?
Yeah.
And is your mic is turned up, right? Sensitivity on?
Yeah.
All right. We still got a few more tricks up our sleeves.
Oh, yeah. Does that have to come up?
All right, try again, Mr. Guy.
It's very quiet.
Say something.
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better. There we go. All
You
right.
got me?
You got some a lot of time to prepare your answer here, so
Okay.
all guns are yours.
Okay, well, thank you, John, and greetings to everybody there at the Y20. Let me begin my answer to your question, John, by acknowledging everything that's been said by the previous speakers about the speed of change and transformation in the world of work and the effects of the pandemic. There are other things at play as well, but after having said that, let me center on your question about this demographic bonus or demographic dividend. It is true, isn't it, that those countries which have youthful populations have the advantage of having a higher percentage of their population of working age, and this is obviously positive for growth, potential growth at least, and development. And it also relieves any pressure on the financing of social protection systems. But there's a precondition for cashing in this demographic dividend, and that is making sure that young people are able to have access to jobs, and we would argue decent jobs. And here's the first issue, youth employment. Clearly, if we're not able to get young people into the labour market, that demographic dividend becomes a demographic problem in the terms of large-scale youth employment. And when I speak to labour ministers around the world, 9 times out of 10, they tell me that their top priority is youth employment. So at this time when we have 17% youth unemployment in the world, we know that we have a precondition for cashing in the demographic dividend. 2 other points I think that we need to consider in this scenario. One, and it's been mentioned by the previous speakers, of course, is access to education and training. And education and training which is appropriate to the needs of job markets. We talk very frequently about a mismatch between the skills that are produced by our educational systems and the skills that are required by labour markets. And when you have that mismatch, you clearly have a problem. And then on social protection itself, one thing the pandemic has revealed is a dramatic shortfall in provision of social protection. The fact of the matter is that 53% of the world's working people have no social protection whatsoever. So clearly a priority of social and economic policy making needs to be the building up of sustainable social protection systems. So I don't think having this youth dividend is a pretext for reducing social protection system. The imperative in the world is quite the opposite. For the most of the developing and emerging countries in particular, now is the time to start building mature social protection systems that can help us navigate this rapidly changing world of work. And my last point, and it echoes what the Minister from Singapore has said, at a time of such rapid change in the world of work, we would be making a mistake to believe that we can sufficiently equip young people for the needs of the labour market by the training that they get at the beginning of their lives. We actually need a permanent training process, what we call lifelong learning systems, so that people can keep pace with the rapid pace of change in the world of work.
Thanks so much. So that closes out our first opening question. So our next question has to do with this transition from the informal economy to the formal economy. Just a little bit of context here. We all know that, businesses and workers have a hard time transitioning to the formal economy to avoid the taxes, the cost of compliance. There's a lot of, undesirable elements to the formal economy for a lot of businesses and employees. You can make more money as an employee and the business doesn't want to pay the taxes. So, the question here is, what is the policy pathway to make the formal economy employment more desirable, more lucrative for both employers and employees? And so we'll start with you, Mr. Guy, since you went last time.
Thank you, John. Yeah, well, just to give you one statistic to give context to this very important discussion, 6 out of 10 workers in the world work in the informal economy. It's the majority of the world's workers. And those figures can go up to 80 to 90% in some of the least developed countries. Now, what we have, at least in the International Labour Organization, is a very clear consensus that we are aiming at the formalization of the informal economy. Why? Because for governments, informality means the loss of state control. It means a loss of tax revenues, as you've indicated. It means that policy making doesn't have traction over a large part of the economy. For the employer community, very simply, informal enterprises which don't apply national legislation in the field of labour, which don't pay taxes or social security contributions, are very much seen as unfair competitors. And of course, for working people, the fact of the matter is that the informal economy is generally synonymous with very poor and unprotected working conditions. Now, the other point to make is that a very large number of informal enterprises and a number of informal workers are in the informal economy not by choice, but because they simply aren't able to access the formal economy. They have advantages in doing so. There is a percentage of enterprises that willfully evade the regulations of the formal economy, but I don't think that is the case for most. So what do we need to do? Well, in the first place, and you've alluded to this, John, is we need to make the formal registration of enterprises as simple as possible. It is sometimes simply administrative complexity, the bureaucracy of formalizing enterprises which gets in the way. And then we need to adjust our social security systems, our finance systems, to ensure that formalization is accompanied by the right types of benefits. The ILO has a well-established instrument in this regard, a recommendation of the type of combinations of policies that are needed to achieve formalization. And I'm finding around the world that governments are stepping up and actually using this combination of policies to bring about this desirable form of formalization.
Thanks so much, Mr. Guy. And just a reminder, we're about halfway through in, so as we proceed, let's try and make it to that three-minute mark. I know there's a lot of content to cover we have still today. So our next, we'll go reverse order. So Mr. Pahala, you're next.
Well, again, thank you very much. I think a couple of things. Number one, I think by incorporating more people to the formal economy, that will already allow, in some cases, the amount of the GDP that is actually being accounted for, because it's simply that a significant part, when they are actually part of the informal economy, by definition, they are not being accounted for by the accounting system of the economy. So there are numerous evidence that by making sure that they are actually being accounted for in the economy and being part of the more formal part of the economy, there is actually a possibility that the GDP is actually increasing by somewhere between 2 to even 5%, which is actually amazing. And I think the second one, as a government, obviously one of the things that you want to make sure is that once they are actually being accounted for, they are being recognized, we are going to be able to use the policy tools that is actually available for the policymakers to address the issue, how are we going to be able to actually do that. Now, right now, I think this is actually a very good opportunity for us to make sure that they are actually being accounted for, because of the technology actually allows us to actually do so. Before, we have not actually been able to do so. Now with the technology, so for example, let's take in Indonesia, due to the pandemic, we have an application that is actually called Peduli Lindungi. Everybody needs to actually register. They need to actually be part of the system, whether they are actually already being vaccinated or not. And I think there are numerous examples other than that, that the use of apps and technologies has allowed us to actually incorporate it. Another example is Gojek, for example, the application of the ride-hailing in Indonesia that allows many of the merchants in Indonesia to be accounted as part of the economy. So I think that is actually one of the things that we are actually seeing right now. How are we going to be able, again, usage of digitization and technology to get people to have be part of the formal economy, and therefore after that, of course, the opportunity for us to really encourage them to, for example, develop a training program for the informal economy, to make sure that the sales is actually being accounted for as part of the taxation system, for example. And the next question is that what are we going to do after they are actually being recognized as part of the formal economy? What are we going to do in terms of the policies? Whether it is actually the training program, as I mentioned, as well as other policies such as subsidy, cash support that is actually allowed for them, or even financing for the informal sector that makes it actually more to develop further this part of the informal economy.
Thank you, Mr. Pahala. Ms. Vivi, what do you say?
The policy pathways that you asked should rely on a comprehensive job strategy. What do I mean by comprehensive strategy? That create not only more jobs, but also better jobs and inclusive jobs. What we need is just not a bigger pie of job creation, but a tastier pie. What are the ingredients of this job strategy? There are several ingredients. The first ingredient is like ensuring macroeconomic stability so that we have an environment for healthy job creation. The second ingredient is actually improving productivity for the long run growth, for the global competitiveness. The third ingredient is ensuring that we have ability to bridging the skill gaps to respond to the market demand, but also to respond to the changing nature of the world, the disruptions of technology. We also need to have labor regulations that accommodate all kind of works, all kind of workers. So we need to create a win-win solution, not only for the employer, but also for the employee and the job seekers. The last one, addressing the excluded workers phenomena and issues. The youth issues, women, marginal workers, disabled, and also migrant workers. But what more important than, it's not only about what should be in those job strategy, but how we come up with this job strategy. To get buy-in, as you mentioned earlier, to get willingness to pay taxes. So this process should be a government-led process, but based on consultations with stakeholders to ensure that it is evidence-based policy actions, so that at the end we will get the buy-in from everyone. But because the receipts cannot be just copy and paste from one country to the other. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Alvin.
Thank you, John. I will just build upon what my other panelists have mentioned in regard that what can we do practically for platform workers, for own account workers. So these are workers which are engaged in a business or trade without employing anyone. I would say very simply, first, protection. Second, power. Third, prepare. First, protection. Many of these jobs do not afford, for example, savings or retirement adequacy, healthcare, retirement. So what can we do? One of the ways in which we're thinking of is to extend the obligations of these platforms to provide for workplace compensation in the event that you have a work injury. The second is to enable or require of them to have mandatory social security protection. In Singapore, we call it CPF. So that's one, protection. The second one, where I talked about power, is that oftentimes there's a bit of a power imbalance because you're potentially not unionized, there's no collective action. So you need to strengthen that protection. They ought to be able to be represented by an appropriate body with legal backing so that they can have collective bargaining power, and they can also, in the event of disputes, to have a proper dispute resolution mechanism. So protection, power. And the third one, which is the initial point that I made earlier, is people. We need to prepare our people. And that means to continually to upskill them, continually help them to take on new skills for new kinds of jobs. The Gojeks, the Grabs and others, they may change over time. When they become autonomous, when they become self-driving, what do you do after that? So continually upskill them, help them to learn new platforms, new skills. In Singapore, we have worked with the unions to do so. We have worked with institutions, technical colleges, as well as universities to do so. And we think that this is quite important to help them transition to the formal economy. But while they're in the informal economy, make sure they are protected, make sure that they are empowered, and make sure we prepare them. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, we're going to ask some more targeted questions. We'll have questions targeted to certain speakers. So our first one has to do with continuing on social protection. So, and this is targeted to Mr. Alvin and Ms. Vivi. And that is, the pandemic has caused a lot of financial insecurity and instability, but people are rightly skeptical about the social protections for youth because it may discourage good work habits. You're able-bodied, you're young, you should be working. Can you describe a policy framework that preserves that reciprocal responsibility to support yourself while also providing that much-needed temporary relief for the people that need it? And we'll start with Ms. Vivi.
Yes, pandemic has increased the already high level of youth unemployment and youth idleness. Youth idleness here being defined as not being in school, not having job, not looking for a job, not conducting training. In Indonesia, youth idleness is around 20%, and it is much higher for women, around 38%. But it is not only Indonesia. Data show us there are 86 countries with youth idleness above 20%. So we need to address this wicked heart problem. But to address that, we need to understand what are the possible root causes of these problems. Some of possible root causes are the lack of formal job searching mechanism. In many countries, 57% of job seekers in Indonesia, for example, get their jobs through word of mouth, from relatives, from friends. We need a better formal mechanism. The mismatch between what we learn in school, in university, what demanded by the market and what will be demanded in the future. Youth unemployment in some countries tends to be higher for university graduates. The third phenomena is the lack of second chance of upscaling and rescaling. Very few companies provide training, especially if the company is very small companies, there is almost no chance of training. So what we need is a social protection that address those root causes. The program should not only just about safety net or providing cash transfer, but also job search assistance, coaching, upscaling, the opportunity to upscaling and rescaling, certification. You ask questions about like possibility of disincentive of work. And this is not a new worry, a new concern. We have a lot of lessons from countries. Some of the designs can be incorporated, for example, ensuring the benefit size is actually not too big, but also not too small. You could also introduce conditionality of searching for jobs, conditionality of taking labor work, conditionality of taking training and internships. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you hit the nail right there on graduating them out with the upskilling, reskilling. And so we'll, Mr. Alvin, what do you have to add here?
Thanks, John. I just add to Ibu Vivi. I think if we're trying to go upstream, and that means even at the prenatal stage, to help mothers, expectant mothers, to have better outcomes. That's one, and we have programs for that. Then, for the 0 to 3 years old, when they are babies, until toddlers, and then at primary school, and secondary school, and then in tertiary colleges, and then maybe to universities. So at every stage of life, even at prenatal stage, where in case you are at a disadvantage or a vulnerable family, we provide those social protections. Because we understand that the forces of the labor market, the forces of nature effectively, will confer advantages, natural advantages, to those who have more resources. So the job of government is to ensure that you level up. And we think that the best way to do so is to start before you are born. Start at the prenatal stage, and then you tier up. We've done this over time with many different programs called Upskill, Kickstart, and the likes. You can learn more about this. We'll be happy to share with you. But that is part of what we do upstream. So that downstream, when there is a crisis, for example, when COVID hit, where is required, then we have the fiscal ability to provide targeted interventions. We spent, or are spending just this year, earmarked about $9.1 billion to support our people in skilling, in support people in, to deal with inflationary pressures, to also help them and help businesses to upgrade, upskill, to take on some of these new opportunities that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to Singapore. So upstream, quite important, downstream also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Java. I think that point about phased approaches is super helpful for us when we're talking about this communique. So our next question here kind of intersects between social protections and entrepreneurship, and that is, people, especially in an international community, overemphasize college degree paths at the expense of other pathways. Some people are suited for other highly skilled work. What can be done to create a feasible alternative to the college path for those students? This question will be directed at Mr. Pahala, following with Mr. Alvin. So, Mr. Pahala, you're on deck.
Thank you, John. I think as I actually mentioned previously, in addition to the college or the university path, I think a lot of the jobs that is actually being created in the next several years is actually requiring somebody with what we call the vocational studies. So I think this is actually one of the things that we in the SOE, the state-owned companies in Indonesia, is really working hard, working with the various department and ministries in Indonesia, including that with its very respective SOE itself, to be able to develop the institution that will be required to develop these vocational skills. So for example, in the area of plantation, for example, one of our SOE, PTPN, our plantation group holding company, is really focusing how are we going to be able to develop these vocational studies to allow people, whether it is actually in the plantations or in the plants, to be able to really maintain the machineries, develop and maintain the plantation itself. And so this is actually the thing that we are actually focusing on. The second thing is developing the entrepreneurial path for Indonesians. And I think this is actually done through the financial, mostly in the SOEs through the financial institutions, because one of the role of the financial institutions is really about creating the next entrepreneurs. And so for them, it's really about developing not only the financing products, but also how are they going to be able to develop partnerships in developing the training, the workshops, and various other coaching mechanism for them to be able to develop the entrepreneurs really on a day-to-day basis, whether it is actually the sub-micro, the micro, as well as the small businesses in Indonesia.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful for all of us here. We're a little short on time, so I'd ask speakers, just get it down to like 2 minutes. We got a few more questions I want to get through, maybe 2 or 3 more. I think that's maybe it might be too ambitious, but we'll get it done. So our next question is directed to Mr. Guy. And so, when we talk about social safety nets, and we're talking about the future of the economy, what should become the rights of workers? How do we balance, or how do we find that line between workers' rights, worker protections that we've been talking about, but also that bottom line of business profitability? If the business goes under, there's no job to be had for there to be any protections. How do we find that line, Mr. Guy?
Yeah, well, the first thing perhaps to say is I don't see an automatic trade-off or play-off between rights on one side and profitability on the other side. I think most enterprises do well when they're employing people whose rights are respected and who are able to work productively. Rights, of course, properly understood, rights are not negotiable. I mean, they're simply fundamental rights which we all have. The point is, I think, how do we work out the right terms and conditions of employment, be it in terms of social protection or of wages and hours of work. And these are generally decided, when things work well at least, through cooperation, negotiation between the employer and the workers. And by and large, we find that this is the best way to a high road of both profitability on the one hand and respect of workers' rights on the other. When it comes to social protection, I want to echo, and I'll close on this, John, I want to echo what's already been said. You know, we shouldn't see social protection as antagonistic to employment objectives. In fact, social protection policies and employment policies need to be complementary. Very important that social protection is designed to crowd people into the labour market, not to keep them out. And so we need the support of public employment services to match demand and supply for working people, and the right design for social protection policies, and education and training is also part of that.
Yeah, Mr. I think that's the right word to use, is complementary. And so here, our next question here is going more on the entrepreneurship side, you know, and this is directed at, again, Mr. Guy and Mr. Pahala. You know, how can the public and private sectors develop the ideal ecosystem and framework to empower these social enterprises that are helping to solve social problems and tackle that problem of youth unemployment in our post-COVID economic recovery? Mr. Guy or Mr. Pahala, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. Again, I think there are several elements of actually developing entrepreneurs in any economy, I guess. One is actually what you need is the infrastructure for them to actually be able to develop the businesses. So it can be, most of the entrepreneurs actually work through the marketplace, and it can be a physical marketplace, or it can actually be an electronic marketplace. So this is actually the role of the government to actually, mostly if it's actually a physical marketplace, to be able to create the various marketplace where they can actually find and access the customers for them. Or in the current terms, maybe most of the marketplaces can actually be developed through the electronic marketplaces. I think the second one, in addition to the marketplace, they will need, again, to be able to continue to develop the knowledge, to be able to actually develop the capability, to enhance the capability in terms of the product quality, as well as other things, because as they want to graduate higher in terms of their capability, of course, they will need to actually develop this. So again, there is actually the role of the government, obviously, to be able to develop. How are we going to be able to develop the capability of the entrepreneurs? Of course, they cannot actually do it alone. They will need to actually develop that with other parties, such as universities or financial institutions, for example, who has the aspiration, obviously, to be able to continue to develop these entrepreneurs. And I think the third is actually about capital. And I think how are we going to be able to, so through developing various types of instruments, whether it is actually lending or equity participation, whether it is actually soft loan, for example, particularly for new starting entrepreneurs in various institutions, and I think various sectors as well. So we are actually looking at these three to be able to address and continue to develop the future entrepreneurs. There needs to be infrastructure and marketplace, capability development, as well as capital to further develop them.
Thank you, Mr. Pahala. And I think with given time, we'll let Mr. Guy have the last word.
Thanks. Well, I would agree with the previous speaker that I think the appropriate ecosystem, as the question phrases it, for entrepreneurship is a mixture of education and training, of appropriate regulation, and this issue of finance, as has been emphasized as well. It's very interesting that your question refers to social enterprises. We're seeing I think, a renaissance of interest, particularly as a result of the pandemic, a renaissance of interest in not simply profit-seeking enterprises, but cooperative and socially motivated enterprises. Young people often are very attracted by them, and we have seen in the period of crisis how they have been very helpful in alleviating some of the more extreme situations in our societies. Now, clearly, not everybody is going to become an entrepreneur, be it a for-profit entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur. But this is an important part of the equation of getting the world back to work. You know, the global economy is still operating at 3.8% below the level of work that was being done pre-pandemic. So we still have a margin of progress to make, and this is going to be one contribution to achieving that progress.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Well, this concludes our panel. I just want to thank you guys for helping us develop our communique that we'll hopefully send your way when we're done. You guys can give us your comments and feedback afterwards. But thank you so much for being a part of our toolbox as we build this out. And again, it's a real honor to host you guys here at the House of Representatives. So we thank you so much for your attendance and participation. Why don't we give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bapak John Dominguez, and all the speakers for the insightful discussion. And now we invite a moderator and speakers for photo session in the front of the stage. Yeah, we are invite the moderator and speakers for photo session in the front of the stage. Okay. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Once again. In 3, 2, 1. Once again. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Please give a big applause for moderator and speakers today. It's a very insightful discussion today. Please return your seat for moderator and speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude this day, we would like to thank our partners who have been very supportive throughout the series for our event, the Y20 organizer from every country of G20 members, and we also wish our delegates to have fruitful discussion and negotiation ahead. This event hosted by Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, supported by Provincial Government of DKI Jakarta and Enjoy Jakarta, the Regional Government of West Java Province, sponsored by Peluang, GoTo, Bank Sentral Asia, Tanoto Foundation, PT Bayan Resources Tbk, Kadin Indonesia, Moya Group, LG Electronics Indonesia. Powered by Zoom and supported by the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise of the Republic of Indonesia and the following state-owned enterprise, which are driving force of the country's economic growth: Wijaya Karya, Hutama Karya, BRI, Injourney, Jasa Marga, Pos Indonesia, PT Adikarya Persero Tbk, Krakatau Steel, Pelabuhan Indonesia, Taspen, ASDP Indonesia Very. And we would also like to inform you that you can visit G20 Expo virtually. Please visit our virtual expo through y20-indonesia.org and click Virtual Expo button. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude this day, we would like to thank our partners who will continue to work alongside us as we move forward. the Y20 organizers from every country of G20 members. And we will move to Kempinski Hotel for a welcome dinner. And also do not miss it, the second talk show, which will be talking about digital transformation, live stream at 8 p.m. Western Indonesian time. Once again, welcome to wonderful Indonesia, the host of Y20 Indonesia 2022. On behalf of the Y20 co-chairs and the organizing committee from Indonesian Youth Diplomacy, we thank you for attending the opening ceremony and the first talk show of Y20 Indonesia Summit 2022, from recovery to resilience, rebuilding the youth agenda beyond COVID-19. Only for delegates and observers, we invite you to go and gather in front of Nusantara 3 building for take a picture on site. And other participants, please stay in your position to give away for delegates and observer. Thank you very much for your attention. I am Muhammad Gibran signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you and thank you very much.
Ministry of State-Owned Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia and SOEs play a pivotal role in driving Indonesia forward.
Ongoing major transformation has led Indonesia state-owned enterprise on the path towards stronger corporate governance, profitability, and resilience.
The ministry and SOEs are committed to empowering
Only
our future workplace and youth.
information only for delegates and observers. We invite you to go to and gather in front of Nusantara 3 building for take a picture on site. Once again, only for delegates and observers, we invite you to go and gather in front of Nusantara 3 building for a take a picture on the site. Thank you.
Gue mau investasi aja.
Tapi nggak ngerti caranya.
Jangan khawatir. Kamu bisa investasi beragam aset sekarang nggak pakai ribet. Semua ada di aplikasi Peluang. Betul, bisa nabung emas, reksadana, indeks saham Amerika, dan aset lainnya. Hanya dengan 3 klik, kamu bisa investasi praktis, aman, dan berpotensi lebih untung. Kapan lagi? Peluangmu sekarang.
Wika bukan hanya hadir, tetapi turut menorehkan sejarah panjang pembangunan Indonesia, serta tidak ragu mereposisi diri menjadi BUMN yang siap berkompetisi di kancah internasional. Baktiku untuk Wika, baktiku untuk Indonesia.
We dedicate each drop of this sweat to you, to the people of Indonesia. We will continue to give our best to the nation. We will always be eager to develop the country. Innovation for solutions.
This is the first step to bring smile. BRI, Pegadaian, and PNM strides on, bringing changes as one entity, bringing you closer to us, and answering all your needs to bring smile. This is our answer that brings you to grow and brings meaning to everyone's smile.
Selamat datang di sebuah pengalaman perjalanan baru Indonesia bersama Journey. Terbang bersama kami untuk melihat pariwisata Indonesia, sirkuit internasional, bentang alam, program atraksi budaya, produk lokal
pengalaman.
Indonesia, warisan budaya, keamanan dan kenyamanan. Journey membawa keramahan Indonesia ke dunia.
tumbuh kembang kami juga memberikan makna dan arti. Betapa pentingnya peran kami yang tak pernah lepas dalam hadirkan konektivitas. Karena kami yakin dan mampu untuk terus lewati batas dan merajut konektivitas. Indonesia.
Mereka yang tak pernah padam untuk ikut serta dalam membangkitkan perekonomian Indonesia. Dan kini, mereka yang tak pernah lepas untuk selalu berperan dalam membantu dan membangun negeri demi Indonesia yang lebih maju dan demi memberikan pelayanan yang terbaik. Karena mereka adalah Pos Indonesia.
Siapapun bisa mengajar, tapi tak semuanya bisa menjadi guru. Semua orang bisa menolong sesama, tapi tak semuanya bisa mengemban amanah. Siapa saja bisa menjadi abdi negara, tapi belum tentu mengabdi dengan dedikasi.
Dengan jaminan pasti dan layanan terbaik, Taspen hadir untuk Anda, pahlawan bangsa.